right, so the prosecution, the defense wrapping up their cases. The judge's going to handle a couple of matters, get his instructions tightened up. Jury is going to be in the jury room for a little bit. And, you know, you think about this case, interesting part about the statement, the judge did what he should have done, did it perfectly, actually, to say that you use this statement to talk about the credibility of Daniel Smith, not to impute guilt on Stephen Wilson, but use it to weigh the credibility of Daniel Smith. Important point to make. And Stephen Wilson deserted the Army with Daniel Smith, and the two of them left their base in Fort Drum, New York, and they never went back. Now, about a month and a half later, these soldiers were charged in the death of Reverend Mark McCullough. And we've got a guest with us now, Shad Meshad. He joins us to look at the violence linked to military service, and Meshad is the founder of the National Veterans Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us, Floyd.
It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, now, first I want to say, you know, we look at this case and we see the great job that you and so many other veterans and our men and women who are serving all over the world do for our country, the wonderful things they do. We thank God for them and for the lives they afford us here at home. So I thank you for your service and everyone else. But what we're talking about today is what happens when some of these soldiers come back and how they assimilate into society. So talk to me about post-traumatic stress disorder and what soldiers are going through, particularly people who are in combat when they return to the States. What does it mean, and what are the symptoms?
Well, there are multiple symptoms. It means that it's basically it's a disorder which occurs through a catastrophic event. As we know, in war, it's a life and death situation. Hopefully most people do. Soldiers sure know that. And one of the unique things about this war, and a unique thing about, as we discussed, PTSD, and particularly in these trial cases, is the fact that there's multiple PTSD occurring. We're having men and women serving multiple tours that are in life and death situations every day. There's no really safe zone in these two wars. The green zone, probably more kills have occurred in the green zone. And so these men and women are suffering the violence that war perpetrates, and they're trained to do. I mean, basically you're trained as a soldier to search and destroy and kill the enemy, and that's what you do.
Yeah, and when they're coming back, though, taking multiple tours, what's done to re-assimilate them in society? I mean, is there enough being done by the military to get folks prepped to be back in society?
Well, one way to put it is they spend about a year to 18 months of really training our best soldiers to go over there to be professional killers, to search and destroy the enemy. You got to remember that. And they exercise that on multiple tours. So many of them have probably killed more than you and I know in many cases. And they have to come back in that transition period. They don't put 18 months to 2 years into deprogramming them and bringing them back into civilization, so to speak. In other words, a nonviolent, non-aggressive, supposedly society for the most part, and to move in. The symptoms in PTSD go the range from depression, anger, dissociative behavior, irritability, flashbacks, nightmares, the whole gamut. And the behavior looks very strange, particularly when they come back to their families and friends, and whether they go back to school or whatever. It's a very difficult adjustment. Many of the units have programs for them 3 to 6 weeks to help them get ready to be civilians once again. But for the most part, there's two problems. One is the soldiers are really eager to get back into civilian life, have no idea really the changes internally that have happened. So they don't really listen in those sessions or classes. And they're really 3 to 6 weeks. To me, as a mental health professional and someone that has been involved in PTSD from the very beginning, it's really not enough.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like a lot of time. And when you look at this, is this war any different from any other wars in the past? I mean, you mentioned people going back on multiple tours. Is it something indicative of the Iraq War, the wars that we're seeing now? And also, when we think about that, is this contributing to a rise in crime among soldiers coming back?
Absolutely. I've predicted there's be a tsunami in the next 5 or 10 years with these soldiers in criminal behavior, only because of the aggression and the activity that they have participated in. You got to realize that over half our troops have been National Guard and Reserves. These are men and women with families and children that have regular jobs. They're managers at Walmart or Kmart or whatever. They could be lawyers or attorneys, but they come back and switch on, switch off, back into killing, back into being a loving, caring husband or teacher or whatever. It's very difficult. So that's a very difficult process. The fact of the multiple tours, the fact that we have not ended either one of these wars. We're involved in 2 wars. We still don't know if there's going to be an end or an outcome. So there's really no completion. And they come back and, you know, the war has been going on 7, 8, 9 years, depends on which war you're looking at.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's 3rd, 4th, 5th page. I mean, more of the news today is about other things other than 3 soldiers died today in Afghanistan or whatever. So it's a matter of both society, military, and everyone putting an emphasis on bringing our men and women back and deprogramming them and integrating them back into society. That's what my whole career is about. We are actually, particularly in relation to this trial, which, by the way, I'm not familiar with other than the last few days because we're dealing, several of us mental health professionals that do the expert witnessing for many of these soldiers, and as I say, is going to be an epidemic, are dealing with educating the defense attorneys on how to apply what we're discussing and how that may affect the behavior, which is different than the normal civilian.
Right.
In fact, the foundation is publishing a book that'll be out probably by Veterans Day in November about defending the veteran in the criminal justice system.
Right.
Most attorneys that we work with have no idea how to go about doing that, what to relate to, what's this, what's that. And not every soldier has PTSD. A lot of it is just a knee-jerk reaction of being in combat, and sometimes it's translated back home, unfortunately.
All right, so when you look at this, and you look at the bond between soldiers and PTSD, you mentioned that there's a book being written to help attorneys understand this. Should it be offered in every case in some way, or is it just to say, as you said, it doesn't happen to all soldiers, but we should definitely look at it as an option?
They need a book, they need a guideline to go through to understand whether this is related to war or not. It's not here selling the war, selling the behavior that many of these crimes have. It's not selling that. It's understanding, is this a part of this negative antisocial behavior? If it is, we need to consider that. I mean, if we're going to send them